Two guards told a black teacher to leave her son's graduation, but no one expected 8 Navy SEALs to rise from the crowd without saying a word. Marlene Drayton hadn't planned to draw attention. She wasn't there to prove anything or make a scene. She just wanted to see her boy walk that stage. The school gym was already buzzing when she arrived. Parents crowding the bleachers, kids waving handmade signs, a brass band tuning up near the corner. The air smelled like popcorn and fresh floor wax, mixed with the faint tang of excitement. Marlene parked her silver Camry along the chain-link fence, gathered her purse and the thick envelope marked "Reserved Seating, Honored Guests," and stepped out into the sun. Her dress was simple, dark navy with pearl buttons down the front, and her shoes were polished flats, the kind she wore to parent-teacher nights and funerals. She had taught for 32 years in the same district. Most of the kids in that gym had passed through her classroom at some point, including the principal's nephew and the superintendent's niece. She didn't need applause or special mention. Her name lived quietly in the margins of report cards, underlined in ink where it said "Favorite Teacher." Today wasn't about her. It was about Elijah, her son, valedictorian, first in the family to walk the stage with honors. She made her way toward the entrance, her pace slow but certain, unaware that the moment would soon split in two, before the guards and after. The gym at Franklin High was already packed by the time Marlene Drayton reached the double doors. It was the kind of building you could find in any small American town. Weathered red brick, faded blue paint on the railings, and a set of bleachers that cracked when too many people leaned in at once. Inside, the air carried a familiar mix of floor wax, popcorn, and too much perfume. Balloons bobbed overhead, tied to plastic chairs. Names were taped to rows in black marker, one for each graduating family. Marlene moved slowly, taking it all in. She wasn't in a rush. Her heels clicked softly against the polished floor as she walked down the middle aisle, nodding politely to faces that half recognized her. She had spent over 3 decades teaching in this district, history mostly. Some of these parents had once been her students. Some of the teachers she passed had shared morning coffee in the lounge and whispered with her during fire drills. She held a thick white envelope in one hand with a gold seal stamped on the flap, "Reserved Seating, Front Row, for families of award recipients." She didn't flash it. She didn't need to. Her son, Elijah, had earned that seat. First black valedictorian in a decade, full ride to Morehouse. She found her place in the second row on the left, seat 3. The metal chair wobbled slightly, but she didn't complain. She placed her purse beside her and sat with her back straight, her hands folded over her lap. Her eyes found the stage almost immediately. It was decorated with red and white banners, the school colors. A podium stood in the center with a microphone someone had tested too many times. Now it buzzed quietly in the background. A group of students waded off to the side, some laughing nervously, others adjusting caps that didn't sit quite right. Somewhere in that line was Elijah, tall and slender, with the same high cheekbones she saw in the mirror every morning. She hadn't cried yet. She wasn't planning to. She had told herself this was a day for joy, not reflection. But deep down, she felt it building. The quiet swell of something too big to name. A pride that didn't need fireworks or speeches. Just presence. Just being here. She adjusted the hem of her dress and glanced around the gym. She didn't notice the 2 guards watching her yet. Not then. Not while the music started and everyone rose for the anthem. Not while her heart beat in rhythm with the song. Not while she placed one hand over her chest and whispered to herself, "You made it, baby. You really made it." Marlene Drayton didn't become who she was overnight. She came from Beaumont, Texas, a town that still carried the dust of segregation in its school walls and city ordinances. Her mother cleaned houses. Her father patched roofs in the August heat and never once complained about the blisters. They didn't have much, but they had pride and rules. Speak clearly. Sit straight. Don't let anybody tell you where you do or don't belong. Marlene was the first in her family to go to college, a scholarship kid who earned every inch of her diploma with late-night study sessions and weekend jobs. She majored in history because no one ever taught it right. Her professors skimmed over things, glossed past Tulsa, redlined maps, the names of women who stood taller than the books gave them credit for. She became a teacher, not just to correct the story, but to remind her students they were part of it. She taught for 32 years in the same district. Never left. Never wanted to. She wore her ID badge like armor and her syllabus like scripture. Students still emailed her years after graduation. Miss D, you made me believe I wasn't invisible. Miss D, I got into Howard. Miss D, I named my daughter after you. Her husband, Marcus, had been the quiet kind. Navy SEAL, taught her how to shoot a rifle, but never once raised his voice. He died on a mission in Afghanistan, leaving behind a folded flag, a trembling 5-year-old son, and a woman who knew how to carry weight. She never remarried, didn't see the point. Instead, she poured everything into Elijah. He became her cause, her joy, her answer to the ache. She raised him on lesson plans and borrowed books, made sure he understood what legacy meant, even if it didn't always come with applause. She taught him that strength was quiet, that dignity didn't need to knock down doors. That's how Elijah grew up, on baked chicken, bedtime stories about Harriet Tubman and Bessie Coleman, and the steady rhythm of his mother grading essays late into the night. When he got accepted to Morehouse, she didn't cry. She just looked at the letter, nodded once, and said, "That's good, baby. That's really good." And now here she was, sitting in the front row of a gym packed with families, holding the memory of a man who gave his life for others and the pride of a boy who turned into a man right before her eyes. She hadn't asked for special treatment, never had, never needed to. But what she didn't know, not yet, was that the life she'd lived and the love she'd given had planted seeds in people she hadn't seen in years. People who had waited for the right moment to repay a debt they could never forget. And when that moment came, they would rise, not with noise, but with purpose. Marlene adjusted in her seat as the national anthem ended and the room settled into polite applause. She reached into her purse to pull out the folded program, smoothing the crease along the spine. Her name wasn't printed anywhere, and that was fine. She hadn't come into the spotlight. She came for the third name from the end, Elijah Drayton, valedictorian. She traced the letters once with her finger before folding it again and tucking it beneath her thigh. That's when she noticed the shift. 2 men in black polos and cargo pants began making their way down the side aisle. Private security. Harlan Services, according to the logo stitched over their hearts. One was short and broad with a clean-shaven scalp. The other, taller and lean, moved with a kind of lazy confidence, chewing gum like he had somewhere better to be. They weren't looking at the stage. They were looking at her. Marlene didn't move. She'd been stared at before, dismissed before, told to wait, told she didn't belong. She adjusted her back straighter and rested her hands in her lap. The short one leaned down. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us. This section's for family only." She blinked once, then calmly reached for the envelope on the chair next to her. It bore the school seal and the principal's initials, reserved for honored guests. "My son is valedictorian," she said softly. "This is my seat." The taller guard didn't even glance at the document. "We were told the section's full. There's room in the back. Let's not make this a big thing." Her voice didn't rise. It never did. "I'll be sitting right here." A couple nearby shifted in their seats. A teacher standing near the gym wall paused mid-conversation. The air hadn't changed. Not yet, but the temperature had. She held the same posture she used in the classroom when kids tested her, the kind that didn't need volume to demand attention. The shorter guard frowned. "Ma'am, you're holding things up. Just move to the back." But Marlene didn't. She didn't flinch, didn't sigh. She simply looked forward, lips tight but calm, as if the conversation were over. What they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that Marlene Drayton had walked through tougher fire than inconvenience and intimidation. And just a few rows back, someone else had noticed. A man with a trimmed beard, a dark blazer, and a presence that didn't ask for permission. He stood, quietly, deliberately, and when he did, everything changed. The taller guard took a step closer, gums still working behind a tight jaw. "Look, ma'am," he said, his voice lower now. "We're just following instructions. It's not personal." Marlene didn't turn. She kept her eyes on the stage where students were beginning to line up in their caps and gowns, their nervous laughter drifting faintly over the crowd. The short guard crossed his arms. "You're disrupting the ceremony." His tone was sharp now, clipped with frustration. Still, Marlene stayed still. "I'm not the one moving through aisles asking mothers to give up their seats." The taller one scoffed. "We're trying to be reasonable." Marlene gave him a quiet look. "Reasonable would be checking the document I handed you. Reasonable would be speaking to the principal who signed it." A pause followed, thin and tight. Someone nearby cleared their throat. A man behind her shifted his phone slightly, maybe filming. The guards sensed the attention. The shorter one muttered into his radio, his fingers twitching near his belt. "Ma'am, don't make this a problem." At that moment, the man in the dark blazer stepped forward, slow and intentional. His voice didn't rise, but it cut through the tension like a pin through fabric. "Is there a reason you're bothering this woman?" The guards turned. The tall one raised a hand, trying to sound calm. "Sir, this doesn't concern you." "It does now." The man's voice stayed steady. His stance said he didn't bluff. A second man stood, then a third. One by one, scattered across the gym, 7 more followed. No one spoke. No commands were given. They simply stood, their posture precise, still, quiet. Not aggressive. Anchored. The kind of stillness that comes from combat zones. Not high school bleachers. The guards looked around, confusion flickering behind bravado. They hadn't expected this. They didn't recognize the men. But Marlene did. She didn't say a word. Didn't even look back. She knew that shape of silence. Knew that kind of loyalty. These weren't strangers. These were the men who served beside her husband. The ones who carried the weight with him. And now they had returned. Not in uniform, but in something stronger. Presence. The short guard's eyes darted around the room, clearly noticing the shift, but not yet understanding it. He adjusted the radio on his belt, mumbling into the mic, still trying to project authority. The taller one, now visibly uneasy, rocked on his heels and looked over at the principal near the stage, hoping for some kind of cue. But the woman stood frozen, lips parted, eyes locked on the growing line of men who had quietly risen from their seats. One stood near the aisle with arms folded, another leaned against the far wall, his gaze steady, unreadable. A third positioned himself near the exit doors as if covering a perimeter. They didn't move in formation, but they moved with the same rhythm. They were watching everything, not like spectators, but like men used to reading chaos before it happened. The short guard tried again. "Ma'am, we don't want to escalate this. Just step out so we can clear the issue." Marlene finally turned, her voice low but certain. "The issue is that you're trying to remove me from my rightful place. I'm not the one creating a scene." The taller guard leaned in closer than he should have, his hand drifting near his belt, not on a weapon, but near enough to draw breath. That's when the man closest to the aisle took a step forward. "Don't." His voice wasn't loud, but it had weight, the kind that stops movement. The short guard squared his shoulders. "You think standing up makes you right?" The man didn't blink. "I think protecting someone who deserves better makes me human." Around the gym, murmurs spread like smoke. A teacher near the wall reached for her walkie. A father put down his phone. The students on stage had stopped laughing. Nobody clapped for the last name called, because no one was watching the ceremony anymore. They were watching something else. A moment, a line, and the people who refused to let it be crossed without consequence. The gym doors near the back opened with a quiet click, barely noticeable beneath the tension that now pulsed through the room. Another man entered, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in a black shirt with sleeves rolled just past his elbows. His eyes swept the crowd once, and though he didn't speak, his presence landed like a stone in still water. He found a spot along the wall and stood, arms crossed, watching. Then another came in through a different entrance, then another. Each one moved separately, as if by chance, taking positions in opposite corners of the gym. They didn't cluster. They didn't nod to each other. But anyone paying attention could see the pattern forming. 8 men, all with the same stance, the same steady eyes, the same quiet authority. They weren't trying to be seen. But now, no one could look away. The guards were still posturing, still trying to salvage control of a situation they no longer owned. The taller one gestured toward the door again, his voice growing sharper. "Ma'am, I'm telling you, this is your last chance." The shortest of the new arrivals stepped forward, just a half step into the aisle, and spoke without raising his voice. "That's enough." His tone was calm, but final, the kind of tone that doesn't ask for permission. The taller guard turned. "Who the hell are you?" A pause. Then from across the gym, one of the others answered. "Someone who remembers her husband dragging 3 of us out of a burning convoy. Someone who remembers the vow we made at his funeral." The room held its breath. Marlene didn't flinch. She kept her eyes forward, her face still. But in her chest, something shifted. A warmth, a heaviness, the kind of gratitude that doesn't have words. She hadn't seen these men in years. But they had come, without her asking, without needing to be told, because real loyalty doesn't expire. It waits, and when it's time, it shows up. Not in grand gestures or loud declarations, but in stillness, in presence, in the quiet act of standing up and refusing to let something wrong keep walking unchecked. 15 years earlier, in a stretch of blistering desert outside Kandahar, the sun was just beginning to drop, but the heat hadn't let up. Dust clung to every surface, and the silence was the kind that made men nervous. Lieutenant Marcus Drayton crouched behind a crumbling wall of sun-baked stone, sweat dripping from his jawline as he surveyed the smoke curling from the wreckage ahead. Their convoy had taken a direct hit. 2 vehicles mangled, communications down. Chaos thick in the air. He didn't wait for orders. He didn't pause to weigh the risk. Marcus moved, low and fast across open ground, zigzagging through bursts of rifle fire, sliding behind a twisted axle where 3 men lay pinned. One was bleeding from his leg, another had a head wound, the third had a crushed radio and panic in his eyes. Marcus locked eyes with each of them, no words, just a nod. "I've got you." He hoisted one onto his back, motioned for the others to crawl, and led them out of the fire. Minutes later, he went back. Another soldier was trapped under part of the engine block, leg pinned, shouting through grit-filled teeth. Marcus didn't hesitate. He braced both feet, grabbed the metal, and lifted. His ribs strained. The heat seared his palms, but the block shifted just enough for the man to roll free. They got out together, crouched low and moving fast. Behind them, the sand erupted as another round landed too close. When the dust finally settled, all 8 of his men were alive. Marcus stayed behind until the medevac arrived. He didn't say much on the flight out, just checked each man twice and clutched a photo of Marlene and Elijah tight in his hand. Later, at his funeral, those same men stood shoulder to shoulder and made a promise to the woman in the front pew. "We're still his unit. We're still yours." And now, here they were, keeping that promise, not because they were asked, but because they understood something most people never do. Honor isn't loud. It's not for show. It's in the moments when no one's watching, when a man doesn't hesitate to step into danger, or years later into a high school gym, because loyalty doesn't end with a folded flag. It lives on, waiting until it's needed again. The names kept coming from the podium, each one met with polite applause, but the rhythm of the ceremony had changed. The crowd no longer watched the stage the way they had before. Eyes kept drifting toward the second row on the left, where Marlene Drayton sat motionless and where 8 men stood silent in scattered corners of the gym. The guards were gone. The tension had cracked and receded, but something else lingered, a quiet reverence that settled over the crowd, like dust in warm light. Then the announcer paused, cleared her throat, and spoke with care. Elijah Drayton, valedictorian. The name rang out louder than the microphone. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then the room erupted, not with chaos, but with conviction. Applause rose in deliberate rhythm, sharp, strong, intentional. The 8 men clapped in unison, no shouting, no cheers, just the sound of hands meeting with purpose. Elijah walked toward the stage with his chin high, every step measured. His cap sat slightly crooked, but he didn't fix it. He didn't need to. He reached the podium, took his diploma, shook the principal's hand, and turned to the audience. His eyes scanned until they found hers. Marlene didn't stand. She didn't wave. She just smiled, small, steady, proud. He nodded once. A son's thank you, wrapped in silence. The applause swelled again. This time it wasn't just for achievement. It was for everything behind it. For a mother who never moved. For the men who stood when others stayed seated. And for a boy who crossed that stage already carrying the quiet weight of legacy. Outside, the sun hung low over the parking lot, casting long shadows across the pavement as families spilled from the gym with balloons, flowers, and tears they hadn't expected to shed. Elijah stood near the flagpole, gown unzipped, diploma folder tucked under his arm, eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on her. Marlene walked slowly, the way someone walks after something heavy finally lifts. When they met, neither spoke right away. Then Elijah broke the silence. They tried to move you. Marlene nodded once. I know. I was ready to walk off that stage. I really was. Her voice was quiet. And that's why you didn't. He looked at her, confused. Because you knew I had it handled. And you had your moment to live. That's what your father would have wanted. Elijah looked past her then, toward the men who were still lingering at the edge of the lot, talking low, watching without needing to be seen. Who were they? Marlene followed his gaze. His brothers, your father's unit, the ones who came home and the ones who never forgot. Elijah took a deep breath, the weight of it all finally settling. He reached into his gown pocket and pulled out a photo she didn't know he'd carried. The same one Marcus used to keep in his uniform. You're gonna tell me the whole story now. Marlene smiled. Some of it. The rest you'll learn when it matters most. They walked toward the car together, not as teacher and student, not just mother and son, but as 2 people shaped by sacrifice and anchored by love.